Administrator Jackson, I want to follow up with a discussion about the hydraulic fracturing study. I've got a copy of the actual statute here from 2010. And it states, the conferees urge the agency to carry out a study on the relationship between hydraulic fracturing and drinking water using a credible approach that relies on the best available science as well as independent sources of information. Conferees expect the study to be conducted through a transparent, peer-reviewed process that will ensure the validity and accuracy of the data. Agency shall consult with other federal agencies as well as appropriate state and interstate regulatory agencies in carrying out this study, which should be prepared in accordance with the agency's quality assurance principle. So I guess I'm a little concerned about the scope of the study that we're seeing come out. You've just mentioned in response to the chairman here that you're expanding the scope of this study to address not only ecosystem but air quality. It's my understanding that now part of this study includes collecting data on the environmental justice impacts on disadvantaged communities. It seems to me that the language in the in the legislation was pretty clear in terms of assessing the relationship between hydraulic fracturing and contaminated water, and that there has been a very stepped-up increase in expansion of scope. Can you address that part of it?
I can, Senator. And if I misspoke before, I shouldn't have. This is not an expansion of the congressionally directed study. We have a congressionally directed study. You read the scope of it. That is the scope we've kept to. It's been publicly scoped. There's been peer review of the actual scope of the study. The study is ongoing, and we, of course, have had to work with industry in order to get access to some of the sites, because if you want to test around hydraulic fracturing sites, many of them are in private ownership. There is, on the part of the administration, from the President, from the White House, a desire to do additional science around hydraulic fracturing, partially, as someone said earlier, because the public's trust in that technology, we believe, is also based on the belief that we are looking to bring the very best science to bear to ensure that it remains safe. I have said over and over again that natural gas, hydraulic fracturing for oil is an incredibly important part of our energy mix, but we need to assure the American public that we're stepping up to the challenge and getting the best science so that it remains as safe as it possibly can be. So it is not an expansion of the scope study. It's a proposal in the President's budget to add funding to do studies in additional areas, and those would be done with the Department of Interior and Department of Energy.
Okay, so I would agree with you in terms of the science there, but it's my understanding that part of the study now includes collecting data on the environmental justice impacts on disadvantaged communities. So it seems to me that you're presuming that there is an impact. I guess I look at it and say it would be more appropriate to look at these impacts only if you do discover that there is a link between fracking and contaminated water first. So I don't disagree with you that we want to be using best science, not only through the study that EPA is doing, but what the other agencies are doing as well. But it would appear to me that there is an added expansion here in terms of the scope. You've indicated that it will be peer reviewed as the statute requires, and that industry has provided input in terms of giving access to data. Will industry and others be permitted to review this study before it's released?
The study will be put out for public comment, but it will also be peer reviewed during the process. We can get you a briefing on exactly the steps. I know the original data that comes out will go out for public comment to everyone after it's been reviewed.
Okay.